Last night, an anonymous sender dropped a file into my inbox. No name, no subject line, just a single message. Read this and warn them. What you're about to hear is their confession, a childhood memory about a crossing guard in a quiet American suburb, a man who never blinked. And according to this story, he's still out there. You're going to think I'm dramatizing the memories because I was a kid. I wish I was. I grew up in a flat American suburb that looked like it had been photocopied out of a brochure. Ranch houses, crabgrass, blue recycling bins, hydrants painted like cartoon dogs on Memorial Day weekends. Our elementary school sat on a 4-lane road that sliced the neighborhood like a vein. 2 eastbound lanes, 2 westbound, and an always screaming turn lane in the middle where people floated, indecisive as birds. Mornings were a choreography of exhaust and backpacks. It smelled like wet pavement and pencil shavings. Every day, a man in a fluorescent vest took his place in the center of the marked crosswalk. He wore the vest even when it was 20 below and the wind made the lines on the asphalt shimmer like snakes. He held a red octagon at his hip like a shield. And he never, this is not an exaggeration, not a glitch in a child's perspective, he never blinked. The first time I noticed, I was 6. A kid named Mason stuck out his tongue behind the man's back the way children pull faces at statues. I looked up to see if the guard had seen, ready to be caught. He didn't. He just looked straight ahead into the blur of cars. The white of his eyes like chalk under the brim of his cap. A 3-second look. 5, 10. His whistle was a line of silver in the cold, tucked under his chin, motionless, as if the breath that could move it would be borrowed from somewhere else. "Don't stare," my mother said, squeezing my hand. "It's rude." "Why doesn't he blink?" I asked. "Contacts," she said, guessing, unbothered. "Or dry eyes." But there are problems you can fix with drops, and there are problems that stare back at you until your own eyes water and burn and you have to look away. Kids are scientists with bad lab safety. We turned him into an experiment. We whispered rumors about what happened if you caught his gaze too long. We played a game we called freeze. You stood on the curb with your toes touching the painted line. You looked up into those wide, winter-dry eyes, and you didn't look away. Whoever broke first had to carry everyone's gym shoes. I won once. The whole time I felt something crawling behind my corneas, like a housefly walking across the window. I felt time stretch thin. My watch ticked, but not in seconds. It ticked in a patient tapping, like fingernails on a desk. It must have been less than a minute. When the whistle blew and we were allowed to cross, my vision came back in a flood and my nose was bleeding. The fluorescent vest moved back to the center of the street as if it had never left. We thought we were harassing a grown-up. In hindsight, I think he was measuring us. He wasn't new. Every parent had a story. "He was there when I was a kid," said Mrs. Hahn from the PTA over little cups of orange juice at bake sales. "Looks good for his age." Blinkless. A cousin of mine said his dad remembered a crossing guard with the same pale eyes in the 80s, in another town 2 zip codes away. On Halloween one year, Mr. Dwyer, our principal, dressed up with a fake whistle and vest, and half the first graders cried and hid under desks because the joke was too close to the outline of a thing that wasn't funny. If I could go back, I'd tell little me, don't make jokes about shapes that aren't supposed to be funny. There are rules on the road, spoken and unspoken. My father taught me the obvious ones. Look both ways, wait for the light, never assume you've been seen. The crossing guard enforced a stricter set, something older than signage. All motion is debt. All crossings are bargains. The living must be carried from one side to the other, or else they wander. I didn't have those words then. I had sensations, gut level. When he stepped forward and raised that red sign, the entire road froze in obedience. Engines whooped and quieted down. Even the cyclists braked as if compelled by some shared muscle memory. I am not exaggerating when I tell you that even the wind paused. The stop sign lifted, and the air took a breath and held it. We walked, shoelaces slapping the paint, static popping from our sweaters. He watched us the whole time, those eyes like glass beads, direct and unblinking, and in that held breath space, I knew we were traversing something other than asphalt. In second grade, a boy ran. He was late. He shot out from behind Mrs. Hahn's minivan with a glitter backpack bouncing and arms pumping like he could outrun tardy slips. The crossing guard's whistle cut the world into slices. It wasn't loud. It was precise. I remember the long silver note like a knife pulled gently through butter. The boy froze mid-stride. You are going to tell me this is just memory, the way panic exaggerates, but I swear to you, his shoelaces hung sideways in the air like commas. The car that would have hit him kissed the edge of the moment, its chrome grille pressing into a kind of jelly. The driver's eyes were saucers. The crossing guard moved with the slow certainty of someone who has practiced a movement enough to know exactly how it unspools. Step, swivel, sign raised, a turn of his head to keep us all inside the bubble. He placed his hand very lightly on the boy's shoulder and completed the crossing the way you complete an equation. My mother said, "Good reflexes." But it wasn't reflex. It was jurisdiction. You don't think about the crossing guard after you move on to middle school. The traffic pattern changes. You get a bike. Later, you get a learner's permit. The crosswalk shrinks in the rearview mirror of your life. If this was just nostalgia, the story would end there, with the guard becoming a vaguely spooky figure like a scarecrow seen from a school bus window. Except he wasn't made of straw, and he did not stay at that intersection. In freshman year, I spotted him in a town we were only visiting because my cousin had a wrestling match. It was an overcast Saturday, the kind that makes the whole day feel like a mouthful of cold soup. We stopped at a light. There he was, 3 blocks ahead, vest fluorescent in the gray, sign hip high, face immobile. I laughed, said to my mother, "Our crossing guard has a franchise now." She barely looked. "They all look the same," she said, tapping the steering wheel, restless. Then he turned his head directly toward our car. And even at a distance, even through a windshield and spitting rain, I felt the pressure of that look and ducked like I'd been caught cheating on a test. There's a clacking, scraping sound a stop sign makes when you drag it over asphalt. The first time I heard it at night, I sat up in bed, clack, drag, clack, drag. It moved up our street, past the recycling bins aligned like teeth, past the hydrant painted like a dog. My room faced the road. I crept to the window and parted the blinds with 2 fingers. A thin beam of sodium orange streetlight cut my carpet and laid a rectangle on the wall like some cheap stage set. The road was empty. The sound kept moving, clack, drag, until it got to the intersection with the school road and stopped. The house was suddenly big around me. The heater exhaled and ticked. In that emptiness, I heard a single low breath drawn in. It wasn't the heater. At school the next day, the rumor machine had chewed through something. A 6th grader swore she'd seen the crossing guard standing in her driveway when she left for the bus. A 4th grader said the man had been at her church parking lot, making the same sign, "Stop," with his palm raised in a classic pose, so still you'd think he was laminated into reality. When someone walked in front of him, they stopped too, like they'd hit invisible tape. "It's a stunt," a science teacher declared. The music teacher said flatly, "I'm sure he's fine, but please don't look at him too long." The principal told us not to provoke him. The announcement was stretched thin with carefulness, like the words were being pressed through a filter. The first obituary I found was years later. I wasn't looking for it. I was in a dentist's waiting room between college classes, flipping through a plastic-sheathed stack of hometown tabloids that every office seems to buy in bulk. I turned a page and saw his picture, small, seated neatly in an oval frame like a cameo. Charles Chuck Wayland, beloved crossing guard, 1947, 1998. Kind face, neat mustache. The obituary said he died on September 12, 1998, survived by... The list went on. I sat there with a bib clipped to my collar and read the words twice. He died before I was born, which would make sense. Someone else only looked like him. Except the eyes in that grainy photo sat wide and white, just like the 2 coins I knew. And I felt that scrape clack come back up my spine. The hygienist called my name. When she tilted my chair back and shone the light into my open mouth, I watched the reflection of my face in the polished metal of her tools. In the curved chrome, I could see the shape of the overhead lamp, my own eyes watering under the bright. And just for a second behind them, the fluorescent flare of a vest. The metal caught the faintest tiny circle like a whistle, reflected in a whistle. When she asked me to close, I closed too hard and tasted a thin stripe of iron. Blood. It is easier to blame fear on imagination than to consider that there might be patterns with agency, and that some of them wear human clothing to pass inspection. This is where the stupid part comes in. I joined forums. Back then, you could still hop across certain corners of the internet without tripping alarms. Kids who remembered a crossing guard like mine posted blurry photos. Does anyone else's stand like a statue? Someone in Ohio uploaded a traffic cam still, the street empty, but the bios of the pixels around the crosswalk weirdly clotted, like a thumbprint had smudged the frame. A man in Nevada posted a telephone voice recording, the kind that bleeds numbers with its plastic, and in the background you could hear a whistle being tested, once, twice, breathy and not breathy at the same time, like the wheeze of a flute carved from bone. The thread splintered into hoax claims and enthusiasts. The enthusiasts collected timestamps. The timestamps began to contradict distance. The same man appeared at a school in New Jersey at 7:35 a.m., then near a Walgreens parking lot in Montana at 8:02. Maybe your God is a physics equation that has to add up. Mine, apparently, was a fluorescent vest that refused arithmetic. What finally pulled me out of lurker mode were the scars. The man in Ohio posted a photo of his palm. Across the base of his fingers ran a thin, white line like a healed paper cut. Tried to run it, he wrote, meaning the crosswalk, before the whistle. Thought I could beat it. Something held me. Felt like the paint lifted off the road and wrapped around my hand. Someone else had a matching mark. We joked about getting band tattoos, 5 stripes across the hand, Haydn style. I checked my own palm. There, pale and nearly invisible, probably from a fall on a basketball court when I was 11, ran a line I couldn't account for. "You're catastrophizing," a therapist said later, kind, clinical. "You seem to attribute intention to neutral patterns as a way to find order." I nodded, grateful. I tried to go whole days without looking down at intersections. It's surprisingly hard to move through a city without looking down at where your feet go. Everywhere you walk is a promise you're making without reading the fine print. Years' thin memories to stamp-sized pictures. They also thin the skin around them until the pictures bleed through without warning. I moved to a different city, different job, different rhythm. I was proud of how little I thought about him. One Tuesday years later, in a strange neighborhood, I found myself at a four-way stop. Neighborhood children had painted a mural on the utility box, bright suns, a cat with a crown. The air smelled like a sprinkler had run too long. It was the kind of summer evening that makes everything feel humane and accounted for. I heard the whistle before I saw him. 3 notes, not shrill, thin. Picture a cord pulled taut, and someone plucking it with gloved fingers. The sound went through me without a place to sit. Then the scrape. Clack, drag. No, not drag. Placement. A cadence like a metronome being moved closer, closer, closer. I did not look up. I stared into the heat, shiny paint of the crosswalk. The white stripes had air bubbles trapped in them, like fossilized breath. My throat made a clicking sound. You can practice ignoring a thing. That's one of the talents this country teaches its kids. But some presences are like magnets you forgot you swallowed. Your compass needle knows even when your eyes refuse. The smell hit next. I'd always thought he would smell like road salt and cheap coffee. He smelled like nothing. The air around him was a vacuum the wind didn't dare cross. There are kinds of silence. This was the hospital clean, kind that comes before a machine starts. The sterilized moment a surgeon hovers with gloved hands and tells the room to hold. The sign rose into my anchored gaze, red invading white. Stop, it said. The typography of the word had weight. The letters were not just paint. They were permissions suspended. I stared at the O and felt like it was my mouth. Cross, he said. I have never been one to obey without thinking. I could have turned away like an adult, like a free person. I could have kept my eyes on the mural cat's crown and walked when the light allowed, like a functioning member of a city with a budget and bylaws. But, like I said, some presences are magnets, and I'd already swallowed the needle. I stepped forward. My foot hit the white. The world around me quieted like someone had placed a pillow over its mouth. My hearing went soft, then sharp at the edges. My vision narrowed, tunneled, telescoped. I could hear my own pulse and the thin whine of a camera lens adjusting in a piece of equipment that wasn't there. Across from me, a woman holding 2 grocery bags lifted one foot into the space and froze, like she had a question and then forgot it mid-sentence. He moved beside me with the carefulness of an usher in a theater. Up close, the whites of his eyes looked like porcelain. The irises, gray, blue, were the color of winter days that never wake up. The skin under his eyes was unmarked. No swelling, no redness. He wasn't straining not to blink. He was simply built without that function, like a sentence left unpunctuated on purpose. Why me? I asked. Or tried to. The word came out inside the bubble, where speech slurs like sound underwater. You approach crossings like games, he said. His voice had the flat warmth of a radio announcer, Midwestern and friendly, nothing you'd push away. His lips barely moved. You put your toes on lines. You practice not looking away. I was a kid. You still are, he said, without cruelty, only faith in what he was stating. You crossed before the whistle once. I remembered the blood from my nose, the whistle carved butter of time. I didn't, you did, he said, and in the book that tallies, crossings count. whether you understand the rules or not. What book? He glanced at the stop sign as if it contained all the literature required for my small perception. The book that keeps the night from swallowing the middle of the road, he said, as if he were explaining a street fair to a child. It is not paper. We were 2 stripes in, 2 to go. A girl in pink sneakers had 1 foot raised high, permanent as a dancer figurine in a snow globe, except the snow was grains of glass held up by patience. Inside the bubble, the girl's shoelace swung like a pendulum. I wanted to tell her to never, ever run on paint. What happens if you blink? I asked. He turned his head very slightly, so his never-wetting eyes faced mine, and for a fraction of something smaller than a second, the world around us shuddered. The grocery bags the woman held crackled. 1 grape shifted in its cage of other grapes. You do not want to know, he said gently. And yet, you will. What do you want from me? I asked. To stop, he said. And then, after a pause that inserted a paragraph break into reality, or to serve, choose. We reached the curb. The bubble popped with the softest sigh. The cars breathed. An impatient driver gestured apology like a good citizen. The woman with the groceries took her step and then shook her head like a swimmer resurfacing. The girl in pink blazed away, unaware she had been an icon and not a child for an instant. He lowered the sign. Not here, he said. You will answer later. Not everyone is asked. He raised the whistle. For the first and only time in my life, I saw the hint of moisture on his mouth, not like saliva, more like the wet edge of a horizon at dawn. He did not use the whistle. He only showed it to me, an item with a gravity well. He left me on the curb. I stood there while the city, my city, which had never asked anything serious of me, resumed its tantrum of motion. The mural cat stared with its crown. The utility box hummed like a heart. When something is true in the old way, you begin to find references to it everywhere. The library copy of Crossing Brooklyn Ferry fell open to the lines about the others that are to follow, and I pressed my fingers into the margins as if heat might pour from the paper through my skin. My phone's suggested videos included a traffic cop in Malaysia doing a hypnotic hand wind, and my chest hurt watching the way his gestures sculpted and released order, as if he were a priest with asphalt for an altar. At night, falling asleep in my too-warm room, I'd hear the clack-clack of a sign being placed and removed again and again, like a metronome training a pianist in the invisible. The second time he asked me to choose, he didn't speak. He sent me a message, a photo attachment, no text, from an email address that felt, without reason, like standing on a median at dusk. The image was a crosswalk I knew well, the one outside the hospital where my father had started weekly appointments that spring. In the picture, the white stripes glowed. The asphalt was the color of the ocean in winter. The night hung just above, as if crouching. In the top right corner, a fraction of his vest flared, like an omen. A week later, my father took a step without looking. A cyclist slammed brakes and swore. My father laughed, the way men his age laugh to fold embarrassment into something light. Behind him, someone's whistle blew. Nothing official, just a kid messing around. My stomach hit the floor of the world. I wrote back to the address with every excuse. I can't. Not me. I understand rules, but only as they apply to me, not as I would apply them to others. I am not a conductor. I am a passenger. Choose one of the station masters of Earth, the management types, the leaders who love ritual. Choose Mrs. Han from the PTA. Choose the music teacher who begged us not to look. The reply was another photo. A school bus emptied. Children looked at a camera they did not know had been invented. In the lower left corner, a small, familiar figure, me, stood with a backpack one size too large and a band-aid on a knee. Across the image had been drawn, in thin red lines, a grid. In some of the squares, a dot. A caption finally accompanied the picture. They are not dots. They are mouths, the road's mouths. They eat when no one is watching. We keep them shut while you cross. I didn't sleep for 2 nights. When sleep came, it came in segments, like crossing in pulses. 1 stripe, freeze, 1 stripe, freeze. In the longest of those fragments, I dreamt the road that leads out of my childhood neighborhood, the one past the hydrant painted like a cartoon dog. The stripes were bones. The bones were lids. Under them, something wet shifted, patient as a lung. The guard stood with his sign. He did not blink. Behind him, in the glare, a line of people held identical whistles in their hands and waited, eyes peeled open the way you peel somebody else's fruit when they're too sick to do it themselves. When I woke, I turned on every light I had. The whistle sound rose in the apartment around me, faint and constant, like tinnitus. I went to the bathroom mirror and practiced not blinking. Time in that small room, which had never asked anything of me except rent, stretched jelly thin. It's vanity to think you're being hunted when in truth you're being recruited. Vanity makes you think you're special. Recruitment is more insulting. It makes you realize you're generic enough to fill a role. I kept refusing. My father kept crossing. Twice I saved him with a hand to the chest and a, "Wait, Dad." He looked at me like I was touching him for the first time since adolescence. "Since when are you cautious?" he said, not unkind, but with something like pride and pain mixed together. Children descend into rulemaking when they love somebody whose feet are already half a step into whatever comes next. On a Sunday when the sky looked heavy as folded bed sheets, they took it away from me. Choice, I mean. I was with him by the hospital entrance, the automatic doors breathing their automatic breath, the little advertisement TV screens inside marketing, smiles to waiting rooms. The crosswalk out front is a polite suggestion most drivers ignore. A man in a silver SUV rolled forward, looking at the parallel universe of his phone. My father took his too quick step. I reached. The whistle ripped through reality, not the quiet butter knife. The blade itself, cold and bright. It cut the SUV into the pause between moments. The driver's mouth became an accidental kiss. The automatic doors froze mid-pant. A robin hanging in the air between a bush and the skies flapped the idea of its wing and did not move. The crossing guard stood in the road like he owned it. He did. He looked at me, not unkindly, not triumphantly. There is no triumph in collecting a debt that was always going to be paid. He lifted his sign, and with a motion of his chin, no fingers, no force, he guided my father across the last 2 stripes. The bubble popped as my father's shoe hit the curb. He looked down at his own feet and laughed in that baffled, grateful way older people laugh when they've almost dropped something fragile and managed not to. I stepped into the road to say it. "Fine," I said through my teeth. "Fine." He lowered the sign. The air inhaled us. The robin committed to wing. The SUV driver finished the kiss his mouth had started and swore softly because he'd almost been rude to the universe, and the universe had paused just long enough for him to catch up with his better self. The guard nodded once, an employer acknowledging a new hire who will be trained in silence. "How?" I asked stupidly. He placed the whistle in my palm. It was warm, as if it had been held in the pocket of a body that had learned to be exactly the temperature of the world. The thin cord attached to it slid through my fingers like a string attached to a kite, And I had the unbearable impression that if I didn't hold on, something would carry it up, up, and then down in a long arc into an intersection that wasn't paved. "You already know when to blow," he said. "No," I said. "I don't." He tilted his head. "You always did." He stepped backward into traffic, and there was no traffic. The road made room for him the way a crowded room makes unconscious space for someone who is exactly where they're supposed to be. He didn't vanish. He just went on to the next corner where somebody's child was about to put their toes on a line and make a bargain without reading it. I wish the story ended there. It would be neat. It would be human. It would be merciful. It does not. Here's what you don't want to know. The blinking is for us, not for them. We blink to wet our eyes, to clean, to interrupt, to redistribute light. He doesn't blink because he can't afford to look away from all the mouths in the middle of the road that are always waiting, patient as wells. If he blinks, one opens. If one opens, something crosses that does not belong on sidewalks or in hospitals or in the aisle with the laundry detergent. You can call it superstition. You can call it a metaphor. I am telling you that the white lines on the road are lids, and I am telling you that someone has to keep them closed while we pretend our lives are ours to plan. My hand has a new scar across the base of the fingers. It looks like I got careless with a box cutter opening groceries. When I press it against the mirror, the mark lines up with the lines I can't see but know are there. The grid drawn over everything like a filter in an app built by a god who loves order. I don't wear the vest all the time. The vest knows when to find me. The whistle hangs in my apartment by the door, and sometimes I hear it click against the wall on a windless night as if it is counting. I do not blow it often. When I do, the world quiets and becomes precise. In that breath, I am an instrument. Children move through. Men with phones step back, sheepish. Women carrying groceries exhale and adjust their grip. A bird pauses in the air to consider its next wing. The mouths in the road stay shut. I can feel them under the white stripes. The hunger damp and almost polite. Do not romanticize this. It is not heroic. It is janitorial. It is wiping down a surface everyone smudges and no one honors. It is keeping lids on pots nobody knows are boiling. You asked for a confession. Here it is. I have wanted to fail. In the middle of a long night at a bland intersection near a shuttered strip mall, watching cars like silver fish, I have wanted to blink and see what crawls up out of the world when no one's watching. I have wanted to hear what it says when it puts its face close to the pane and whispers into the pores of the white, "We are thirsty." I have wanted to let one small open happen in a place where only raccoons would see. I have not. Not because I am good. Because when the time comes, I hear the breath of a child on the curb behind me, someone daring themselves with their toes to touch paint. He still shows up too. He appears at corners where my courage thins. He watches not to supervise, but to companion. He doesn't correct me. He corrects the world around me so I can do the small thing I agreed to. Once, at dawn, in that pale hour when parking lots look like airports, he stood beside me at a deserted four-way, vest bright as a warning nobody had invented yet. He turned his face toward mine and I cannot tell you how long it lasted because time isn't a ruler you can hold up to a phenomenon like this. He lowered his lids a fraction. You think I am going to say he blinked? He did not. He performed the shape of it, only to show me what it would look like if he did. In that almost blink, the paint on the crosswalk shivered. A hairline crack ran through the white. A breath rose from below that smelled like rain in a room with no windows. He raised his lids again. The crack closed. The road went back to pretending it was flat. "Keep them safe," he said. "I'm trying," I said. He nodded. The never-blinking eyes somehow softened, a mercy of posture rather than anatomy. He walked away. The clack of the sign against the road did not make a sound this time. The silence itself made it on his behalf. If you made it this far, you're either a believer or you're about to go into your neighborhood and stare at paint. Do not. That is not the point of this. The point is this. When you stand at a crosswalk and you feel a held breath, respect it. Do not tug at the pause like a thread. Do not test the bubble because you are bored or late. Do not make games with your toes. If a figure in a vest raises a sign and looks at you with eyes that do not water, look away respectfully, like you would from an eclipse. You are not the one performing in that moment. You are the one being carried. If someday you hear a whistle and everything inside you quiets as if the world has lined up for inspection, keep your place. Walk when instructed. Look down at the paint without putting your soul on it. And if you cannot help yourself, if you stare and feel something staring back through you from under the white, do not say, "I didn't warn you." Some roads have more than two sides. Some crossings take more than feet. Some duties, like thirst, are communal. We share them not because we're noble, but because not sharing turns every corner into a mouth. I am going to stop writing now, not because the story is over. It isn't. Because I hear it. That little click against my door. The whistle is tapping its own body, asking to be held. This neighborhood has a way of forgetting that children exist until a car is idling where a car shouldn't idle. The mural on the utility box here features a dog instead of a cat. Crownless and grinning, tongue painted blue because the volunteers ran out of red. It is a good evening for a crossing. The kind where the sky lowers itself to the height of your eyes and asks without blinking, "Well, I'll go. I'll stand there. I'll lift my hand and watch the mouth stay shut. If you pass me, don't wave, don't take a picture. Don't hold a staring contest with a job. Just walk." That's the arrangement. That's the mercy. If you look, you might recognize me. I used to be the kid who tested the bubbles. Now I keep them from popping. And when I'm done, and only then, I will blink for the both of us. End of confession. If you're listening to this and you just heard a whistle outside, don't test it. Walk when told. And don't look too long at anyone's eyes tonight. Some of us are holding our breath for you.